Welcome to Mystery Tales channel. I'm your host, Alex. Tonight, we dive into a brand new Hercule Poirot adventure, crafted in the timeless style of Agatha Christie. Settle in with a cup of tea, dim the lights, and let the intrigue unfold. This is Fatal Promise of Madame Veroux, a locked-room mystery set in the opulent world of 1920s England. Our story unfolds primarily at Veroux Manor, a sprawling country estate on the outskirts of London, with whispers of scandal reaching into the city's high society. It's a long tale, over 90 minutes of twists and deductions, so relax and enjoy. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Is it a cosy armchair in London, or perhaps a train ride across the countryside? Let's begin. Chapter 1. Whispers of a Promise. The autumn of 1927 draped London in a golden melancholy, its streets alive with the clatter of horse-drawn cabs and the hum of motor cars, while coal smoke wove a faint haze over the city's spires. In his elegant yet understated apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his impeccably waxed moustache and egg-shaped head, sat by a crackling fire. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, glinted in the lamplight as he sipped a tisane, the herbal aroma curling around him like a comforting memory. The world outside buzzed with post-war exuberance, but Poirot preferred the quiet order of his thoughts, where his little grey cells reigned supreme. The door burst open, admitting Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's loyal friend and chronicler, his face alight with the flush of excitement. Hastings, with his boyish enthusiasm and slightly dishevelled tweed suit, was a stark contrast to Poirot's meticulous calm. "Poirot, old chap," he exclaimed, tossing his hat onto a chair with a flourish. "You won't believe the talk at the Savoy today. It's all about Madame Veroux." Poirot set down his cup with deliberate precision, his fingers brushing the porcelain as if aligning the universe itself. "Madame Veroux, mon ami. The widow of the late Monsieur Charles Veroux, the shipping magnate, non? A woman whose fortune is matched only by the whispers of scandal that trail her like a shadow." "Spot on!" Hastings paced, his boots scuffing the polished floor. "She's hosting a grand weekend gathering at Veroux Manor in Surrey. The whole of high society's buzzing about it. But here's the kicker. They say she's made a fatal promise to reveal a secret that's been buried for years. Something that could topple reputations, ruin fortunes, maybe even worse." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sure sign his curiosity was piqued. "A fatal promise, you say? Most intriguing. And why does this gossip reach the ears of Hercule Poirot?" Hastings grinned, producing a cream-coloured envelope sealed with a wax crest. "Because she's invited you. Well, us, really. I'm to come along. She heard of your triumph on the Orient Express, quite the sensation, you know, and insists you attend as a guest of honour. Says it's for security, but I'd wager there's more to it. The invitation arrived at my club this morning." Poirot took the envelope, his fingers tracing the embossed crest, a stylized ship entwined with a rose. "Security, Hastings? Non, non. When a woman of Madame Veroux's stature requests Poirot, it is not for mere protection. There is a puzzle here, and the little grey cells, they tingle with anticipation." He opened the letter, scanning the elegant script. "We are to arrive tomorrow evening. Very well, mon ami. Let us prepare for this adventure. But beware, in a house of secrets, even the mirrors may lie." The journey to Veroux Manor was a study in contrasts. A train from Waterloo Station carried them through London's smoky sprawl into the serene Surrey countryside, where fields of fading green rolled beneath a sky heavy with the promise of rain. From the local station, a chauffeured Rolls-Royce whisked them along a winding gravel drive, flanked by ancient oaks whose branches clawed at the dusk. Veroux Manor emerged like a vision from a Gothic novel, a sprawling edifice of weathered stone, its towers and chimneys silhouetted against the twilight. Ivy clung to its walls, and manicured gardens gave way to misty woods that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. At the grand entrance, Madame Veroux awaited them. She was a vision of timeless elegance, a woman in her early 50s, whose raven hair, streaked with silver, framed a face of striking beauty. Her emerald gown shimmered under the chandelier's glow, and her eyes held a depth that suggested both charm and calculation. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice a melodious contralto with a faint French lilt. "You honour Veroux Manor with your presence. Welcome." Poirot bowed, his movements precise. "Madame, the honour is mine. Your invitation, it speaks of more than hospitality, oui? Perhaps a matter requiring the attention of the little grey cells." Her smile was enigmatic, a flicker of something unspoken crossing her features. "Perhaps, Monsieur Poirot, but tonight we celebrate. Come, meet my guests and let us enjoy the warmth of good company." The drawing-room was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across Persian rugs, mahogany panelling gleamed with polish, and a roaring fireplace lent a golden warmth to the air. A gramophone played a soft waltz, mingling with the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversation. Poirot's keen eyes surveyed the assembled guests. 5 suspects, each a thread in the tapestry of intrigue he sensed was about to unravel. First was Reginald Veroux, Madame's nephew, a handsome but dissolute young man of 28. His slicked-back hair and tailored dinner jacket could not mask the restless energy in his dark eyes, or the smirk that played on his lips. As heir presumptive to the Veroux fortune, he stood to gain millions, yet rumours of gambling debts and reckless liaisons painted him as desperate. Next, Lady Amelia Croft, a society beauty in her mid-30s, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Once engaged to Madame's late husband, Charles, she had been jilted when he chose Elise. Her laughter was bright, but her eyes held a glint of bitterness, suggesting a motive rooted in a broken heart or thwarted ambition. Dr. Elias Thorne, the family physician, stood apart, a stern figure of 50 with wire-rimmed spectacles and a clipped grey beard. His hands, steady as a surgeon's, betrayed no emotion, but whispers persisted that he had hastened Charles Veroux's death during a mysterious illness, perhaps with poison, not medicine. Miss Clara Beaumont, Madame's personal secretary, was a mousy woman of 25, her plain brown dress and spectacles belying the sharp intelligence in her eyes. She handled all of Madame's correspondence, including the so-called fatal promise. Did she know too much, or was her loyalty a facade? Finally, Colonel Marcus Hale, a burly retired military man of 55, his red face and booming voice filling the room. A business partner in the Veroux shipping empire, he had clashed with Madame over profits, and their disputes had grown heated. His motive seemed tied to financial ruin, or perhaps something deeper. As cocktails were served, Madame Veroux raised her glass, her presence commanding silence. "To promises kept and secrets unveiled," she declared, her voice ringing clear. "Tomorrow night, in the library, I shall reveal a truth that has haunted this family for decades, a truth that will change everything." The room stilled. Reginald's smirk faltered. Lady Amelia's fingers tightened on her glass. Dr. Thorne's spectacles glinted as he glanced away. Miss Beaumont's pen paused over her notebook. Colonel Hale's face flushed deeper. Poirot noted each reaction, his mind cataloguing the undercurrents of tension. "Madame," he said softly, stepping forward. "Such announcements, they are like throwing a stone into a still pond. The ripples may bring danger." She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "With you here, Monsieur Poirot, what could possibly go wrong?" Hastings leaned close, whispering, "She's bold, isn't she? But I don't like the feel of this, Poirot. It's as if they're all waiting for a storm to break." Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving the guests. "Oui, Hastings. And in this storm, the little grey cells must be our umbrella. Observe, mon ami, the motives are already taking shape." The evening unfolded with a lavish dinner in the grand hall, where candlelight danced on silver cutlery and crystal goblets. The conversation was brittle, laced with veiled barbs. Reginald boasted of a recent polo victory, his arrogance grating. Lady Amelia flirted with Colonel Hale, her laughter a touch too sharp. Dr. Thorne spoke dryly of medical advancements, his gaze lingering on Madame. Miss Beaumont scribbled notes discreetly, her hands steady but her eyes darting. Poirot noted a peculiar detail. The Colonel avoided the claret, sipping only water, as if wary of poison. As the clock struck 10, Madame rose. "Tomorrow we gather again, rest well, for the truth awaits." The guests dispersed to their rooms, their footsteps echoing in the manor's cavernous halls. Poirot lingered, examining the room. "Hastings, did you notice? The air. It is heavy with secrets, this fatal promise. It is the key to all." Hastings shivered. "I don't like it, Poirot. This place feels like a trap." "Perhaps, mon ami. But for whom?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic as he retired to his room, the firelight casting long shadows behind him. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Night. The grand hall of Veroux Manor glowed under the flicker of candlelight, its long oak table laden with the remnants of a sumptuous dinner. Roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and decanters of ruby-red claret. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax, and the undercurrent of unease that had settled over the guests since Madame Elise Veroux's cryptic toast. Hercule Poirot, seated at the far end, observed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker, his green eyes darting from face to face. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, leaned close, his voice a hushed murmur. "Poirot, there's something off about this lot. They're all on edge, like actors in a play waiting for the curtain to drop." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching as he sipped his coffee. "The play, it is a tragedy, and the stage is set for something most sinister. Observe, their hands, their eyes, they betray what their words conceal." The guests lingered over dessert, a delicate lemon syllabub, but the conversation was strained. Reginald Veroux, the dissolute nephew, recounted a polo match with forced bravado, his voice loud enough to mask a tremor. Lady Amelia Croft, her auburn hair catching the candlelight, laughed too brightly at Colonel Marcus Hale's gruff anecdotes, her fingers twisting a pearl necklace. Dr. Elias Thorne, the stern physician, spoke sparingly, his gaze fixed on Madame Veroux as if diagnosing her every word. Miss Clara Beaumont, the mousy secretary, scribbled in a small notebook, her pen moving with the precision of a metronome. Colonel Hale, red-faced and burly, avoided the wine, a detail Poirot had noted earlier, and instead downed glass after glass of water. The absence of Victor Lange, the enigmatic German artist, was conspicuous. He had excused himself to his studio, claiming inspiration. Madame Veroux presided over the table like a queen, her emerald gown shimmering, Her silver-streaked hair swept into an elegant chignon. "My friends," she said, rising with a glass in hand, "tonight has been a delight, but tomorrow promises revelations. In the library, I shall share the truth that has bound this family in silence, a promise kept at last." Her voice, with its faint French lilt, carried a weight that silenced the room. Reginald's smirk faltered, his glass clinking against the table. Lady Amelia's smile froze, her eyes narrowing. Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his fingers steady but his jaw tight. Miss Beaumont's pen paused, ink blotting her page. Colonel Hale coughed, his face reddening further. Poirot's gaze lingered on each, cataloguing their reactions like clues in a ledger. As the clock struck 11, the guests began to retire. Veroux Manor boasted 20 bedrooms, each secured with sturdy brass keys, their locks gleaming with recent polish. Madame's suite, on the second floor, was a sanctuary of luxury. A four-poster bed draped in velvet, an adjoining study with a mahogany desk, and French doors leading to a balcony overlooking the misty gardens. The doors, like the main entrance to the suite, were locked from within, a detail the butler, Jenkins, confirmed as he escorted Madame upstairs. Poirot and Hastings lingered in the drawing-room, the fire now reduced to glowing embers. "What do you make of it, Poirot?" Hastings asked, swirling a brandy. "That promise of hers, it's like waving a red flag at a bull. Someone's bound to take a swing." Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. "The promise, Hastings, it is the spark. But the powder keg? That is the motives of our guests. Each has a reason to wish Madame silent. The little grey cells, they sense a storm brewing. At midnight, the silence of the manor shattered. A scream, high and piercing, echoed through the stone corridors, followed by a frantic pounding. Hastings leapt to his feet, brandy splashing, as Poirot, in his silk dressing-gown, moved with surprising agility. They followed the sound to the second floor, where Jenkins, pale and trembling, hammered on Madame's door. "I heard a cry, sir," he gasped, "from inside her suite." Colonel Hale arrived, his nightshirt hastily tucked into trousers, clutching a crowbar. "Stand back," he barked, and with a heave he forced the door, wood splintering around the lock. The guests gathered, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity. Reginald in a velvet robe, Lady Amelia in a silk kimono, Dr. Thorne with his medical bag, Miss Beaumont clutching a shawl, and Victor Lang, paint-stained hands betraying his late-night work. Inside, the scene was one of horror. Madame Veroux lay sprawled on the plush carpet, her emerald gown stained crimson. A dagger, her own letter opener engraved with her initials, protruded from her chest, her eyes wide in a frozen expression of shock. The room was sealed. The door had been bolted from within, the key lying on the floor near the desk. The French doors to the balcony were locked, their latch undisturbed. The windows were shut tight, no signs of forced entry. The chimney was too narrow for passage, and the walls revealed no secret panels. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, kneeling beside the body. "The impossible crime! A murder in a locked room!" Hastings shivered. "Suicide, perhaps?" Poirot shook his head, his eyes scanning the scene. "Non, Hastings. The angle of the wound. It is not possible for self-infliction. Observe the dagger, driven deep with force, and see this note in her hand." He carefully extracted a crumpled paper, reading aloud, "The promise is fatal." Written in her hand, but under duress, perhaps. Reginald paled, his voice shaking. "Aunt Elise, who could have done this?" Lady Amelia collapsed into Colonel Hale's arms, her faint theatrical, but her tears genuine. Dr. Thorne stepped forward, checking for a pulse, his face grim. "She's gone," he confirmed, his voice clipped. Miss Beaumont wept quietly, her glasses fogging. Victor Lange stared at the body, his expression unreadable, as if sketching the scene in his mind. Poirot examined the room with meticulous care. The carpet showed no footprints in its thick pile, though a faint dust suggested no recent cleaning. A porcelain vase lay shattered near the body, its water pooling on the floor, glinting in the lamplight. The desk held an inkwell, a pen, and a stack of unopened letters. The fireplace was cold, its ashes undisturbed. The balcony, 20 feet above the ground, showed no ladder marks or scuffs on its stone railing. "The little grey cells, they protest," Poirot murmured. "A room locked, a woman dead, and no trace of the killer. This is a puzzle most diabolical." The police were summoned, but a brewing storm delayed their arrival, the wind howling through the manor's eaves. Poirot took charge, his voice calm but commanding. "Until the authorities arrive, no one leaves this house. We are all suspects, mes amis, and the truth, it hides among us." Lady Amelia gasped. "Suspects? Surely you don't think we—" "Madame," Poirot interrupted, "in a house of secrets, everyone has something to conceal. Now, let us preserve the scene. Jenkins, guard the door. Hastings, fetch my notebook." As the guests dispersed, whispering and casting wary glances, Poirot knelt again, studying the note. "The promise is fatal," he repeated softly. "But whose promise, and to whom?" Hastings returned, notebook in hand. "Poirot, this is madness. How could anyone get in or out? The door was bolted, the windows locked. It's impossible." "Impossible?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Non, mon ami. The impossible is merely the possible in disguise. We must look beyond the obvious, beyond the locked door and the dagger. The truth, it lies in the details." He rose, his gaze sweeping the room. "The vase, why broken? The water, spilled for a reason. And the key, fallen so conveniently. The little grey cells, they begin to work." The storm outside intensified, rain lashing the windows. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is no ordinary murder, Hastings. This is a performance, staged to deceive. And Hercule Poirot, he does not applaud a lie." Chapter 3. The gathering storm dawn broke over Veroux Manor like a reluctant confession, its grey light filtering through heavy clouds that pressed low over the Surrey hills. The storm that had delayed the police now rumbled in the distance, its thunder a grim underscore to the tragedy within. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, a cavernous room of leather-bound tomes, polished oak shelves, and a massive desk that seemed to anchor the manor's secrets. His silk dressing gown was gone, replaced by a crisp suit, his moustache impeccably waxed despite the hour. Captain Arthur Hastings, bleary-eyed but alert, hovered nearby, clutching a notebook as if it were a shield. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "this place feels like a tomb now. That locked room. How could anyone have done it? And why?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he paced, his steps measured. "Why, Hastings, that is the heart of it. The how of the locked room is but a trick, a clever one, oui, but a trick nonetheless. The why, that is where the little grey cells must focus. We begin with the facts." He turned to the assembled guests, summoned to the library despite their protests. The air was thick with tension, the scent of old books mingling with the faint tang of fear. Reginald Veroux slouched in an armchair, his handsome face pale, his fingers drumming nervously. Lady Amelia Croft perched on a velvet settee, her auburn hair slightly dishevelled, her eyes darting as if expecting another scream. Dr. Elias Thorne stood rigidly, his spectacles glinting, his medical bag at his feet like a silent accusation. Miss Clara Beaumont clutched her notebook, her glasses slipping down her nose as she avoided Poirot's gaze. Colonel Marcus Hale loomed by the fireplace, his burly frame tense, his red face betraying a sleepless night. Victor Lang, the artist, leaned against a bookcase, his paint-stained hands folded, his expression unreadable. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "A crime most foul has been committed. Madame Veroux lies dead, murdered in a room locked from within, a dagger in her heart, a note in her hand proclaiming, 'The promise is fatal.' We must establish the truth. First, your movements at midnight, when the scream was heard." Reginald straightened, his smirk absent. "I was in the billiard room, smoking a cigar. Alone, I'm afraid. No one to vouch for me." Lady Amelia's voice was sharp. "I was in my room, reading the Moonstone. I heard the scream and came at once. No witnesses, naturally. Bedrooms are private." Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles. "I took a walk in the gardens after dinner. The air was bracing. I saw no one, and no one saw me until I returned for the commotion." Miss Beaumont's voice trembled. "I was in the kitchen, fetching warm milk for my nerves. Jenkins, the Chiai, butler, saw me there briefly before I returned to my room." Colonel Hale cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "I was in the study, reviewing business papers. Alone, the storm kept me awake." Victor Lang's faint German accent cut through. "I was in my studio, painting by candlelight. The muse, she does not sleep, no one saw me." Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. "Very well. Each of you claims solitude, yet one of you lies. Now, the motives. Monsieur Reginald, you stand to inherit Madame's fortune, oui? But your debts, they are substantial, are they not?" Reginald flushed, his fists clenching. "That's absurd. I loved my aunt. I owe money, yes, but murder? Preposterous." Poirot turned to Lady Amelia. "Madame Croft, your engagement to Charles Veroux ended when he chose Elise. A wound to the heart, perhaps, that festers still." Her laugh was brittle. "Ancient history, Monsieur Poirot. I've moved on. To suggest I'd kill for it is nonsense." "Dr. Thorne," Poirot continued, "you treated Monsieur Veroux in his final days. Whispers suggest poison, not illness. Did Madame know something dangerous?" Thorne's face darkened. "Slander. I'm a physician, not a murderer. My record is spotless." "Mademoiselle Beaumont," Poirot said softly, "as secretary, you handled Madame's secrets, including this fatal promise. Did you fear exposure?" Clara's hands shook, ink staining her fingers. "I was loyal. I typed her letters, yes, but I'd never harm her." "Colonel Hale," Poirot's gaze sharpened, "your business disputes with Madame were heated. She threatened to sell your shares at a loss, no?" Hale's voice boomed. "We argued, I'll admit, but murder? I'm a soldier, not a coward who stabs in the dark." "And Monsieur Lange," Poirot concluded, "your portrait of Madame, some say it reveals too much. A lover scorned, perhaps?" Lange smiled faintly. "Art is my passion, monsieur. I paint truth, not vengeance." Poirot paced, his boots silent on the Persian rug. "The promise, what was it? Mademoiselle Beaumont, you knew her correspondence best." Clara hesitated, her glasses fogging. "Madame, she planned to reveal that her husband, Charles, faked his death to escape debts. He's alive, hiding abroad. It would ruin the family's name, disgrace us all." Gasps rippled through the room. Reginald's jaw dropped. "Alive? That's impossible!" Lady Amelia clutched her necklace. "Charles, alive!" Poirot's eyes gleamed. A motive for all, then, to silence Madame before this truth could spread. But the locked room, how was it done? He returned to the crime scene with Hastings, the suite now bathed in grey morning light. The body had been covered, but the blood-stained carpet and shattered vase remained. Poirot examined the door. The bolt was sturdy, the key still on the floor inside. The French doors to the balcony were locked, the latch intact. The windows were sealed, no cracks or tampering. The chimney, narrow and sooty, could not admit a person. The walls, solid stone, hid no passages. Poirot tapped them to be sure. "Hastings," he said, "consider the clues. The note, the promise is fatal. Written in her hand, but the ink is fresh, the pen on the desk dry. The vase, broken, with water spilled. Why? And the key, fallen, but not touched by the killer." Hastings frowned. "But the door was bolted from inside, Poirot, and the balcony's too high. No ladder marks. Could it be suicide, staged to look like murder?" "Non," Poirot said firmly. "The wound's angle, too deep, too precise, and the note, forced perhaps, or written in fear. No, this is murder, and the killer is clever." He knelt by the vase, its porcelain shards scattered. "This water, spilled deliberately, to hide something, or an accident in a struggle." He examined the desk, finding a faint scratch near the inkwell. "Curious. A tool, perhaps, dropped in haste?" The butler, Jenkins, hovered nearby. "Sir, the police are still delayed by the storm. The roads are flooded." "Then we proceed alone," Poirot declared. "Hastings, note the alibis. Each is weak, unverified. The little grey cells, they demand more." He questioned Jenkins privately. The butler, a wiry man of 60, confirmed hearing the scream at midnight, followed by footsteps in the hall. But whose? He'd seen Miss Beaumont in the kitchen at 11:30, but only briefly. "She seemed nervous, sir," Jenkins added. "Kept looking at the dumbwaiter, as if expecting something." "The dumbwaiter?" Poirot's moustache twitched. He inspected the small service lift in the kitchen, which connected to Madame's suite. It was narrow, barely large enough for a tray, but its cables were taut, recently used. "Interesting. A possibility, perhaps?" Back in the library, Poirot addressed the guests. "We must consider all angles. The note suggests Madame knew her fate. The promise, was it her doom or another's? Tell me, what did each of you know of Charles Veroux's death?" Reginald admitted borrowing money from Madame, promising repayment he couldn't fulfill. Lady Amelia revealed a letter from Madame, mocking her past engagement. Dr. Thorne confessed prescribing sedatives to Madame, but denied poisoning her husband. Miss Beaumont showed a diary entry. Madame planned to disinherit Reginald. Colonel Hale produced a contract, showing Madame's intent to sell his shares. Victor Lange admitted painting a portrait that revealed a scar. A wound from Charles Veroux, he claimed. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Each of you had reason to fear Madame's revelation, but only one had the means to enter a locked room, or to make it seem so. Hastings whispered, "Poirot, what about the footprint outside the balcony? Small, you said. A woman, perhaps." "Perhaps," Poirot mused, "but we must not leap. The footprint may be a lie, like the dagger itself. The little grey cells, they see a pattern, but it is not yet clear." The storm outside roared, shaking the windows. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. "This crime, it is a masquerade. The locked room is not the puzzle, it is the distraction. We must look deeper, Hastings, to the hearts that hide behind these walls." Chapter 4. Threads of Deception. The morning light at Veroux Manor was a feeble intruder, seeping through the storm-heavy clouds to cast long shadows across the library's oak-panelled walls. Hercule Poirot stood by the grand fireplace, its embers cold, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the gathered suspects. His immaculate suit and waxed moustache belied the sleepless hours spent pondering the locked-room murder of Madame Elise Veroux. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood nearby, his notebook filled with scribbled observations, his brow furrowed with unease. The air was thick with the scent of old leather, and the unspoken dread that hung over the room like a shroud. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice a steady beacon in the tension, "we are in the heart of a puzzle, most intricate. Madame Veroux is dead, slain in a room bolted from within, a dagger in her chest, a note in her hand proclaiming the promise is fatal. We have established your alibis, none of which hold firm. Now, we seek the threads of truth among the deceptions. I shall speak with each of you alone, and the little grey cells, they shall listen closely." Hastings leaned close, whispering, "Poirot, this lot's as slippery as eels. That footprint on the balcony, small, you said. Could it point to Miss Beaumont or Lady Amelia?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Patience, Hastings. A footprint is but a whisper. We must hear the whole story before we judge its meaning." The interviews began in the Manor's morning room, a smaller space with tall windows overlooking the rain-slicked gardens. First was Reginald Veroux, the nephew, his handsome face drawn, his fingers fidgeting with a cigarette case. "Monsieur Reginald," Poirot said, settling into a chair, "your debts are no secret. Madame refused to pay them further, oui? And her promise to reveal her husband's survival, it threatened your inheritance." Reginald's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. "I won't deny I owed money, cards, horses, you know how it goes. But I loved Aunt Elise. She was strict, yes, but murder? I'd sooner pawn my watch than stab her." Poirot noted a tremble in his voice. "And yet in your room I found a handkerchief, stained with blood. Explain." Reginald paled. "A nosebleed 2 days ago. Jenkins can confirm. He brought me a cloth. Check the laundry, for heaven's sake." Next came Lady Amelia Croft, her auburn hair swept up, her silk dress clinging to her like a second skin. "Madame Croft," Poirot said, "your past with Charles Veroux was painful. Did Madame's promise to reveal his survival rekindle old wounds?" Her laugh was sharp, like breaking glass. "Charles was a cad, and Elise knew it. She sent me a letter last month, gloating about how she'd saved him from me. Petty, but I'm above such grudges. I was in my room when she died, reading as I said." Poirot held up a letter, its envelope marked with her initials. "This letter found in your writing desk. It is from Madame, oui, mocking your broken engagement. A motive for revenge?" Amelia's eyes flashed. "She was cruel, yes, but I didn't kill her. That letter proves nothing." Dr. Elias Thorne entered next, his stern face set like stone. "Doctor," Poirot said, "your medical bag contained a vial of arsenic." "Unusual for a physician, non?" Thorne's jaw tightened. "It's for treating specific conditions, rat poison if you must know, diluted for medical use. I've never used it on a patient, least of all Madame. I prescribed her sedatives, nothing more." "And the death of Charles Veroux?" Poirot pressed. "Some say you hastened it." "Slander!" Thorne snapped. "He died of pneumonia. I did all I could." Miss Clara Beaumont followed, her hands trembling as she clutched her glasses. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you found a diary entry in Madame's study, suggesting she planned to disinherit Reginald. Did you know of her other secrets?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "I typed her letters, yes. The promise, she said it would right a wrong. I found a hidden key in her desk drawer, but it's for the wine cellar, not her suite. I swear I was loyal." Colonel Marcus Hale was next, his burly frame filling the doorway. "Colonel," Poirot said, "your business disputes with Madame were fierce. She threatened to sell your shares at a loss, ruining you." Hale's face reddened. "We fought, yes. She was bleeding me dry, but I'm no murderer. I was in the study, as I told you. Papers, not daggers." Poirot held up a contract, its margins marked with angry ink. "This agreement, it shows Madame's intent to cut you out. A motive, non," Hale growled. "Business is war, but I don't kill over it." Finally, Victor Lang, the artist, entered, his paint-stained fingers steady. "Monsieur Lange," Poirot said, "your portrait of Madame revealed a scar. A wound from Charles Veroux, you said. Did her promise threaten your reputation?" Lange's smile was faint. "The scar was her truth, not mine. I paint what I see. If she feared exposure, it was not my doing." Poirot dismissed him, then returned to the crime scene with Hastings. The suite was as they left it. The blood-stained carpet, the shattered vase, the key on the floor. Poirot examined the French doors again, noting a faint scratch on the latch. "Hastings, this scratch, perhaps a tool, or a red herring?" He moved to the balcony, where the small footprint remained, preserved by the rain-soaked stone. Woman's shoe, perhaps, but too deliberate. Planted, maybe, to mislead. Hastings frowned. "But who, Poirot? And how? The room was sealed." Poirot knelt by the vase's shards. "This water, spilled in a struggle, or to conceal something? And the note, the promise is fatal. The ink matches Madame's pen, but the writing is shaky, as if forced." A new clue emerged. A thin thread, caught in the balcony railing, barely visible. "Silk, perhaps," Poirot mused. "From a dress, or something more mechanical?" In the kitchen, Poirot inspected the dumbwaiter again. Its cables showed slight wear, suggesting recent use beyond trays. "Curious, Hastings. Could something or someone have been sent to the suite?" Jenkins, the butler, approached nervously. "Sir, I found something in the laundry. A glove, stained with ink, in Miss Beaumont's hamper." Poirot examined it. A woman's glove, the ink matching Madame's pen. A clue, or another deception? Back in the library, Poirot gathered the suspects. "We have found threads of deceit. A bloody handkerchief, a poison vial, a hidden key, a contract, a scar, and now an inky glove. Each points to guilt, yet each may lie. Tell me, what did Madame's promise mean to you?" Reginald admitted borrowing more than he could repay. Amelia confessed to burning Madame's letter in anger. Thorne revealed prescribing sedatives to calm Madame's nerves, possibly too strong. Clara admitted typing a letter about Charles's survival, but claimed ignorance of its details. Hale confessed to a shouting match with Madame days prior. Lange revealed the scar's origin. A wound from a duel Charles fought, which Madame wanted hidden. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Each thread weaves a motive, but the locked room remains. How did the killer enter and exit? The footprint, the thread, the glove. These are pieces, but the puzzle is incomplete. Hastings whispered, "What about suicide, Poirot? Staged to frame someone?" "Non," Poirot said. "The wound's depth, the note's tremor, they speak of murder, but the method, it eludes us. Perhaps the dumbwaiter, or the balcony, or a trick with the key." A new discovery. A faint wax residue on the key, as if from a candle. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "A tool to manipulate the lock, or another false trail?" The storm outside raged, rattling the windows. Poirot addressed the group. "Someone among you has woven a clever web. The little grey cells, they see the pattern forming, but beware, the truth is a spider, and it waits." Chapter 5. Echoes of the Past. The storm over Veroux Manor raged with unrelenting fury, its winds howling like spectres through the ancient oaks, rattling the leaded windows of the sprawling estate. Inside, the air was heavy with suspicion, the scent of damp stone and old secrets permeating the corridors. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand library, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the disarray, of the investigation. His green eyes, sharp as ever, flickered over the gathered suspects, each a shadow of guilt under the chandelier's dim glow. Captain Arthur Hastings, clutching his well-worn notebook, paced nervously, his face etched with the strain of the unfolding mystery. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. "This case is a tangle. The footprint, the glove, the wax on the key. Every clue seems to point somewhere, yet nowhere. And that locked room, how can it be?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "Mon ami, the clues are like stars in a clouded sky, scattered, but forming a constellation if we look aright. The locked room is a distraction, a sleight of hand. We must seek the truth in the echoes of the past, for Madame Veroux's fatal promise reaches back to sins long buried." The morning had brought no respite. The police, still delayed by flooded roads, left Poirot in command, his authority unquestioned by the rattled household. He had spent the dawn re-examining the crime scene. Madame's suite, with its blood-stained carpet, shattered vase, and the key lying innocently on the floor. The French doors to the balcony remained locked, the latch unmarred save for a faint scratch. The note, the promise is fatal, lay on the desk, its ink confirmed as Madame's, but its shaky script suggested coercion or fear. Poirot called the suspects to the library once more, their faces drawn from sleeplessness. Reginald Veroux slouched, his cigarette case empty, his eyes darting like a cornered fox. Lady Amelia Croft sat rigid, her pearl necklace a lifeline she clutched tightly. Dr. Elias Thorne stood by the window, his spectacles reflecting the storm's grey light, his medical bag a silent sentinel. Miss Clara Beaumont, her glasses fogged, clutched her notebook as if it held her innocence. Colonel Marcus Hale paced, his burly frame restless, his red face a map of frustration. Victor Lang leaned against a bookcase, his artist's hands steady, his gaze distant. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice a calm anchor. "The web of deception grows tighter. Madame Veroux promised to reveal her husband's survival, a secret that threatens each of you. But new complications arise, and the little grey cells, they demand answers. Let us probe deeper." Before he could continue, a second scream pierced the manor, high and frantic, echoing from the upper floors. Hastings dropped his notebook, and the suspects froze. Poirot moved swiftly, his small frame belying his speed, leading the charge to Lady Amelia's room. They found her trembling, a crumpled note in her hand. "You're next." The elegant script matched Madame's, but the ink was fresh, the paper torn from a guest book. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, taking the note. "A threat or another deception? Madame Croft, when did you find this?" Amelia's voice quavered. "Just now, on my pillow. I swear, I've been in the library or my room all morning." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Someone moves among us, weaving fear. This note, it is a clue or a taunt." Hastings whispered, "Poirot, could it be a conspiracy? More than one killer?" "Non, Hastings," Poirot said firmly. "One mind orchestrates this. The rest, they are pawns or perhaps unwitting accomplices." Poirot turned to the group. "We must explore the past of Veroux Manor. Jenkins, the butler, what history does this house hold?" Jenkins, hovering nervously, cleared his throat. "Sir, there was a suicide here, 20 years ago, in the same suite. A governess, Miss Harrow. They said she stabbed herself, but some whispered it was staged to look like murder. The room's been locked ever since, until Madame took it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. An echo of the past, perhaps. A locked room death, repeated, most intriguing. The investigation deepened. Poirot interviewed Reginald again, who admitted a heated argument with Madame days prior, when she threatened to cut him from her will. "She called me a wastrel," he muttered, "but I didn't kill her." Lady Amelia confessed to a public spat with Madame at a London gala, where Madame mocked her as the jilted relic. Her motive grew sharper, humiliation, not just lost love. Dr. Thorne revealed a chilling detail. He had euthanized Charles Veroux at Madame's request, believing it a mercy for his terminal illness. "She begged me," he said, his voice breaking, "but if she meant to expose me, I'd lose everything." Miss Beaumont, trembling, admitted searching the attic that morning for old letters. "I thought they might prove Madame's promise was a lie," she said. "I found nothing but dust." Colonel Hale's alibi cracked. Jenkins admitted seeing him near Madame's wing at 11 p.m., not in the study as claimed. "I was checking the locks," Hale protested. "Business papers, sensitive ones." Victor Lang revealed a twist. The scar in his portrait was not from a duel, but a childhood accident Charles caused, a secret Madame wanted buried. She feared it would identify him, Lang said. New clues emerged. Poirot found a smudge of red paint on the balcony railing, matching Lange's studio supplies. A careless artist, or a deliberate mark, he mused. In the dumbwaiter, a faint bloodstain was found, not enough for a wound, but enough to suggest something sinister. The inky glove in Clara's hamper was joined by a discovery: a torn silk ribbon in Amelia's room, matching the balcony thread. Poirot gathered the suspects again. "The past haunts this house," he said. "A suicide, a faked death, a promise to unveil it all." But the locked room, how? The dumbwaiter is too small for a person, the balcony too high without a ladder. The key, the wax, the thread, they suggest a mechanism perhaps. Hastings suggested, could the dagger have been rigged? A trap in the room? Poirot nodded. Possible, but the wound's angle, too precise. No, the killer was present, then vanished. The little grey cells, they see a trick, but not yet its shape. A commotion interrupted. Reginald bolted from the manor, fleeing into the stormy woods. Colonel Hale and Hastings gave chase, catching him near the lake, soaked and shivering. "I couldn't stay," Reginald gasped. "The accusations! It's too much!" Poirot interrogated him sharply. "You run, monsieur, as if guilty. What do you hide?" "Nothing," Reginald cried. I panicked. Aunt Elise was everything to me." Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Panic is the cousin of guilt. We shall see." Back in the suite, Poirot examined the desk again, finding a hidden drawer with a single letter, unsealed. Charles lives. The promise must be kept. The handwriting was Madame's, but the ink matched the threatening note to Amelia. "The plot thickens," Poirot said. "This letter, written before death, or planted after. And the vase's water, spilled to obscure a footprint perhaps." Hastings shivered. "Poirot, it's as if the manor itself is conspiring. That old suicide. Could it be linked?" "Perhaps," Poirot said. "The past and present, they dance together. But the killer is no ghost. It is one among us. And the little grey cells, they close in." He addressed the suspects. "A new threat, a flight, a hidden letter. These are not accidents. Someone seeks to muddy the waters. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through the fog. Tell me, who among you visited Madame's suite before her death?" Silence. Then Clara whispered, "She called me at 10 p.m. to dictate a letter. I left her alive, I swear." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the others? Speak now, or the truth will speak for you." No one answered, but their faces betrayed fear, guilt, or defiance. The storm roared, shaking the manor's ancient bones. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. "The echoes of the past, they guide us to the truth. But beware, The killer listens, and the game is not yet over. Chapter 6. Fractured Alliances. The storm over Veroux Manor had not relented, its torrents lashing the stone walls as if seeking to unearth the secrets buried within. The library, once a haven of leather-bound tomes and flickering chandeliers, now felt like a courtroom, its air thick with suspicion, and the scent of damp wool from rain-soaked guests. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding the room, his waxed moustache a beacon of order amidst chaos. His green eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the suspects, each a fractured piece of a puzzle that refused to align. Captain Arthur Hastings hovered nearby, his notebook dog-eared, his face a map of worry as he whispered, "Poirot, this case is a labyrinth. The threatening note, Reginald's run. Someone's playing a dangerous game." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice steady as a metronome. "But the game, it has rules, and the little grey cells, they begin to see the pattern. The locked room, the dagger, the note, they are but the surface. Beneath lies a truth most cunning. We must fracture the alliances of deceit to find it." The morning had brought no police, the flooded roads still impassable, leaving Poirot as the sole arbiter of justice. The suspects, Reginald Veroux, Lady Amelia Croft, Dr. Elias Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, and Colonel Marcus Hale, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces etched with fear or defiance. Victor Lang, the artist, leaned against a bookcase, his paint-stained hands folded, his eyes distant as if sketching the scene in his mind. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his tone deliberate, "the murder of Madame Veroux is no simple act. A dagger, a locked room, a note proclaiming the promise is fatal, and now a threat to Madame Croft and Monsieur Reginald's flight into the storm. These are not accidents. Let us probe deeper. What did each of you conceal?" Before answers could come, a commotion erupted. Victor Lang and Reginald collided in a sudden scuffle near the fireplace, Reginald's fist grazing Langer's jaw. "You liar!" Reginald shouted. "You were sniffing around Aunt Elise's suite. I saw you!" Langer staggered, his smile cold. "And you, Herr Veroux, were desperate enough to sell her jewels for your debts. Accuse me, but look to your own sins." Colonel Hale pulled them apart, his burly frame imposing. "Enough! This is a house of mourning, not a brawl." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Most revealing. Old rivalries surface, oui? Tell me, Monsieur Lange, why were you near Madame's suite?" Lange brushed his jacket. "I was fetching paints from the hall closet. Nothing more." Poirot turned to Reginald. "And you, monsieur? Your flight suggests guilt." Reginald slumped, rain still dripping from his hair. "I told you. I panicked. I'm no killer." Poirot paced, his boots silent on the rug. "Let us examine new evidence. The threatening note to Madame Croft. Its ink matches Madame's, but it was written post-mortem, a forgery. The red paint on the balcony, Monsieur Lange. Yours, non? The blood in the dumbwaiter. The inky glove, the silk ribbon, all threads in a tapestry of lies." Lady Amelia clutched her pearls. "A forgery? Then someone meant to terrify me." "Or to distract," Poirot said. "Let us return to the crime scene." In Madame's suite, the air was stale, the blood-stained carpet now a grim reminder. Poirot re-examined the French doors, noting the scratch on the latch. This mark, perhaps a tool to manipulate the lock. He inspected the dumbwaiter hatch, finding a faint scratch inside, as if something sharp had caught. "The blood here. Too little for a wound, but enough for a blade, perhaps." Hastings frowned. A blade sent up the dumbwaiter. But how? And the room was locked. Poirot knelt by the shattered vase, its water long dried. This vase, knocked in a struggle, or staged, and the thread from the balcony, silk, matching Madame Croft's ribbon, but also common in sewing kits, a clue or a plant. A new discovery. A tiny brass cog, barely visible, caught in the carpet near the desk. Poirot held it up, his eyes narrowing. From a clock, perhaps, or a mechanism. The little grey cells, they sense a trick. He questioned Clara Beaumont privately. Her hands trembled as she admitted, "Madame called me to her suite at 10 p.m. to dictate a letter about Charles's survival. She was agitated, said it would right a wrong. I left her alive, I swear." Poirot pressed, "And the inky glove in your hamper?" Clara paled. "I don't know. I used gloves to handle her papers, but not that one." Dr. Thorne, next, confessed a darker secret. "I euthanized Charles Veroux, as he wished. Madame knew, but she promised to keep silent. If she meant to expose me, I'd be ruined." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And the arsenic in your bag? For medical use," Thorne insisted. "I never touched her with it." Lady Amelia admitted burning Madame's mocking letter, but denied the ribbon's significance. "I lost it weeks ago," she said. "Someone must have taken it." Colonel Hale confessed to a physical altercation with Reginald days prior, explaining a bruise on Reginald's cheek. "He was drunk, mouthing off. I set him straight." Victor Lang revealed a bombshell. "I am Madame's illegitimate son from before her marriage. She promised to acknowledge me, but changed her mind. I painted her to honour her, not to kill." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A motive most profound, monsieur. Did you seek revenge?" Lange's eyes were steady. "No. I wanted her love, not her death." In the attic, Poirot found Clara's search had uncovered a dusty journal, detailing the 1907 suicide of Miss Harrow, the governess, in Madame's suite. The entry hinted at a cover-up. They said she stabbed herself, but the wound was wrong. Poirot murmured, "An echo indeed, the past mirrors the present." A red herring surfaced, a vial of sedative, empty, in the kitchen's trash, labelled with Thorne's name. Planted? Poirot wondered. Or carelessness? He tested a theory, examining the suite's clock, a heavy ormolu piece. Its mechanism was intact, but a faint click suggested tampering. Could a device have moved the bolt? He mused. He tried the dumbwaiter, sending a knife up. It fit, but barely. Possible, but unlikely for a person. Hastings suggested, what if the dagger was thrown? From the chimney? Or a vent? Poirot shook his head. The chimney is too narrow. The vent's sealed. No, the killer was in the room, or made it seem so. A twist. Jenkins reported seeing a shadow on the balcony at 11:30 p.m., but the storm obscured details. A figure, small, perhaps a woman, he said. Poirot gathered. The suspects. The alliance's fracture. A forged note. A hidden son. A past suicide. A shadow on the balcony. The promise. It binds you all. But the locked room. How? The cog, the thread, the wax. They suggest a mechanism. Yet the wound speaks of presence. He paused, his voice dropping. Someone among you entered that room, struck Madame, and vanished. The little grey cells, they see the trick forming. A string, perhaps, to pull the key? A device to lock the door? Or a simpler truth, the room was not as locked as it seemed. Reginald protested. You're mad! I was in the billiard room! Amelia clutched her shawl. I was in my room, as I said. Thorne's voice was cold. You've no proof, monsieur. Clara wept. I loved her like a mother, Hale growled. This is a witch hunt. Lange remained silent, his eyes unreadable. Poirot addressed them all. The truth is near, mes amis. The storm outside hides nothing from Hercule Poirot. One of you has played a clever game, but the game, it ends soon. Hastings whispered, Poirot, Are you sure it's not a conspiracy? The clues, they point everywhere." "Non," Poirot said. "One mind, one killer. The rest, they are shadows, cast to confuse. But the little grey cells, they see through the dark." The storm's roar underscored his words, the manor trembling as if sharing its secrets. Poirot's gaze lingered on the suspects, his mind a whirl of connections. The past and present, they converge. The promise was fatal, but to whom? Chapter 7. Hidden Truths. The storm over Veroux Manor raged with unrelenting fury, its gusts battering the ancient stone walls as if demanding the truth be torn free. Inside the library, the air was thick with the scent of old books and the crackle of suspicion, the chandelier's dim light casting long shadows across the suspects' faces. Hercule Poirot stood before the massive oak desk, his small frame a pillar of calm amidst the chaos, his waxed moustache gleaming under the lamplight. His green eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the gathered group, each a puzzle piece in the locked-room murder of Madame Veroux. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook nearly filled, stood at Poirot's side, his face pale with the weight of the unfolding drama. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice taut, "it's like chasing shadows. The cog, the thread, the forged note. Every clue points to someone, yet no one. And that locked room, how can we crack it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind's relentless churn. "Mon ami, the shadows are clearing. The locked room is a clever illusion, but the little grey cells, they see through it. The truth hides in the past, in the motives, in the smallest details. We are close, Hastings, very close." The morning had brought no relief from the storm, and the police remained stranded by flooded roads, leaving Poirot as the manor's sole arbiter of justice. Suspects: Reginald Veroux, Lady Amelia Croft, Dr. Elias Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, and Colonel Marcus Hale, sat in a tense arc, their eyes darting with fear or defiance. Victor Lang, the artist, leaned against a bookcase, his paint-stained hands still, his gaze enigmatic. The revelation of his illegitimacy had shifted the dynamics, and the threatening note to Amelia, coupled with Reginald's flight, had frayed their nerves further. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice slow and deliberate. "Madame Veroux was murdered in a room bolted from within, a dagger in her heart, a note proclaiming the promise is fatal. We have uncovered motives, debts, betrayal, secrets of a faked death, and clues, a bloody handkerchief, an inky glove, a silk thread, a brass cog. But new truths emerge, and the net tightens." Before he could continue, a cry from the hall interrupted. Jenkins, the butler, staggered in, clutching his stomach, his face ashen. "Poison!" he gasped, collapsing into a chair. Dr. Thorne rushed forward, his medical bag already open, administering a quick antidote from a vial of ipecac. "He'll live," Thorne declared, but someone slipped digitalis into his tea. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A second crime, to silence a witness, or to sow chaos. "Jenkins, what did you see?" Jenkins, recovering, whispered, "Last night, near Madame's wing, a shadow, small, moving fast. I thought it was the storm, but now—" Poirot turned to the suspects. "This is no coincidence. Someone fears the truth. Let us uncover more." He returned to Madame's suite, the crime scene now a grim tableau. The blood-stained carpet, the shattered vase, the key on the floor. Poirot examined the desk's hidden drawer again, where the letter, "Charles lives, the promise must be kept," had been found. He noticed a faint smudge of wax on the drawer's edge, matching the residue on the key. A candle perhaps used in a trick, he mused. In the attic, Poirot found a dusty box Clara had overlooked, containing letters from Charles Veroux, dated after his supposed death. One read, "Elise, I live, but you must never tell. The debt is paid." The handwriting matched the threatening note to Amelia, but the ink was older, suggesting a forgery traced from an original. Hastings gasped. "Poirot! If Charles is alive, could he be the killer?" "Possible," Poirot said, "but the little grey cells doubt it. The killer is here, among us." He questioned Clara again. She admitted forging signatures for Madame's business dealings, but denied murder. "I typed her letters, yes, but I didn't know about the promise until she told me that night." Poirot pressed. "And the inky glove?" "I don't know," Clara cried. "Someone must have planted it." Colonel Hale confessed to another detail. He'd punched Reginald not for drunkenness, but over a stolen business ledger Madame had entrusted to Hale. "The boy tried to sell it," Hale growled. "Madame knew." Lady Amelia revealed a new clue. An earring, one of hers, found under Madame's bed. "I lost it weeks ago," she insisted. "Someone placed it there." Victor Lang admitted. The red paint on the balcony was his, but claimed it was from a dropped brush, while sketching the gardens. Poirot examined the brush, finding traces of blood beneath the paint. "Not paint alone, monsieur," he said. "Explain." Lange paled. "I cut my hand painting late. It's nothing sinister." Poirot gathered the suspects in the library. New truths emerge. A poisoned butler, a forged letter, a hidden earring, blood beneath paint. The past suicide of Miss Harrow mirrors this crime. A locked room, a dagger, a staged death. But how was Madame's murder done? He paced, his voice deliberate. "The locked room is the key. The French doors, locked, but the latch bears a scratch. The dumbwaiter, too small for a person, but perhaps for a weapon? The cog, part of a clock, or a device to move the bolt? The wax, used to manipulate the key?" Hastings suggested, "Could the killer have climbed the ivy? It's thick enough." Poirot shook his head. "The ivy is brittle, Hastings. It would not hold. No, the trick is simpler, yet more cunning." He tested a theory, examining the suite's clock again. The cog matched its mechanism, but a faint wire inside suggested tampering. "A device to pull the bolt after the killer left?" he murmured. He tried the French doors, finding the latch could be turned with a thin tool from outside if one knew how. A breakthrough. In the study adjoining Madame's suite, Poirot found a hidden panel behind a bookshelf, barely wide enough for a person. It led to a narrow servant's passage, unused for years, connecting to the kitchen. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed. "The killer could enter and exit, leaving the room locked." Hastings gasped. "But the bolt, Poirot! It was in place." "Oui," Poirot said, "but the bolt could be pulled by a wire, threaded through the keyhole or under the door, then removed. Or perhaps the killer was in the room when we entered." He confronted the suspects. "One of you used the passage or a trick with the lock. The earring, the paint, the cog, they point to misdirection. Who was in the study that night?" Clara admitted being in the study at 9 p.m., fetching papers for Madame. "But I left before 10, she insisted. Thorne confessed to visiting Madame at 10:30 p.m. for a medical check, administering a sedative. "She was alive when I left," he said. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The sedative! Perhaps it slowed her, made her vulnerable, or was it more?" He revealed the passage to the group, watching their reactions. Reginald paled, Amelia gasped, Thorne's jaw tightened, Clara wept, Hale cursed, Lange remained impassive. "The little grey cells, they see the truth forming," Poirot said. "The promise was Madame's doom, but whose hand struck? The passage, the wire, the forged note, they point to one among you." A final clue. A torn sketch in Lange's studio, depicting Madame with a dagger, dated the day before the murder. "A study in art, or intent?" Poirot asked. Lange's voice was steady. "Art, monsieur. I paint what I feel." The storm roared, shaking the manor. Poirot's voice dropped to a whisper. "The truth is near, mes amis. The killer has played a clever game, but Hercule Poirot, he does not lose at chess." Chapter 8. The Unseen Hand. The storm over Veroux Manor roared like a vengeful spirit, its winds clawing at the ancient stone walls as rain lashed the leaded windows. Inside the library, the air was heavy with the must of old books and the electric charge of suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood before the towering oak shelves, his small frame radiating authority, his waxed moustache a beacon of precision in the chaos. His green eyes, sharp as cut glass, swept over the suspects, each a thread in the intricate tapestry of Madame Veroux's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings stood nearby, his notebook trembling in his hands, his face etched with the strain of a case that seemed to twist with every revelation. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice taut. "That hidden passage, it changes everything. The killer could have slipped in and out, leaving the room locked. But who? And why poison Jenkins now?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind's relentless churn. "Mon ami, the passage is but one piece of the puzzle. The locked room is a clever mask, but the little grey cells, they see the unseen hand behind it. The poison, the sketch, the forged note, they are moves in a game, and we are close to checkmate." The morning light, grey and feeble, did little to dispel the manor's gloom. The police, still stranded by flooded roads, left Poirot as the sole guardian of justice. The suspects, Reginald Veroux, Lady Amelia Croft, Dr. Elias Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, and Colonel Marcus Hale, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of fear, defiance, and exhaustion. Victor Lange, the artist, leaned against the fireplace, his paint-stained hands still, his eyes unreadable as if painting the scene in his mind. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice a steady anchor. "The murder of Madame Veroux, a dagger in her heart, a note proclaiming the promise is fatal, a room bolted from within, grows more complex. A hidden passage, a poisoned butler, a sketch of death, these are not accidents. The killer moves among us, and the little grey cells, they draw near the truth." Before he could continue, a clatter from the hall interrupted. A maid, pale and trembling, rushed in, holding a small velvet pouch. "Sir, I found this in the dumbwaiter, hidden behind a panel." Inside was a syringe, its needle glinting, traces of a clear liquid inside. Dr. Thorne stepped forward, his spectacles flashing. "Let me see that," he said, examining it. "It's one of mine, but I didn't leave it there. It contains digitalis, the same poison used on Jenkins." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A second attempt to silence a witness? Or to point to you, Doctor? Most intriguing." He questioned the maid, who confirmed the dumbwaiter had been used late the previous night after Clara's kitchen visit. "I heard it creak, sir," she said, "but I thought it was Jenkins fetching trays." Poirot returned to the crime scene, Madame's suite, where the blood-stained carpet and shattered vase remained untouched. He examined the hidden passage again. A narrow stone corridor behind the study's bookshelf, leading to the kitchen. Its walls were dusty, but a faint scuff mark suggested recent passage. "Someone used this," Poirot murmured, "but the bolt on the door, how was it set?" He inspected the French doors to the balcony, noting the scratch on the latch and the silk thread caught in the railing. This thread, perhaps from a tool, not a dress. A device to manipulate the lock? He tested the latch, finding it could be turned with a thin wire from outside, if precisely applied. Hastings suggested, could the killer have used the passage to enter, killed her, then locked the door from outside with a wire? Possible, Poirot said, but the key was inside, dropped on the floor. The little grey cells, they suggest a simpler trick, yet more devious. A new clue emerged. A tiny mirror shard, lodged in the carpet near the desk, reflecting a glint of light. From the vase? Hastings asked. No, Poirot said. The vase was porcelain, not glass. This mirror, it is out of place, a tool, perhaps, to see around corners. In the kitchen, Poirot examined the dumbwaiter again, finding a faint oil stain on its cables, suggesting a mechanical device. The syringe, the cog, the mirror, could they form a mechanism? He mused. He tested the dumbwaiter, sending a small weight up. It moved smoothly, but the oil hinted at heavier use. Back in the library, Poirot confronted the suspects. A syringe with poison, a mirror shard, a passage, these are the tools of an unseen hand. Who among you knew of the servant's passage? Clara paled. I found old blueprints in the attic, but I never used it. Thorne admitted, I knew of it from treating the staff years ago. It's been sealed since the governess's death. Lange's voice was calm. I explored the manor for my sketches. I saw the passage entrance, but never entered. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And yet, Monsieur Lange, your sketch of Madame with a dagger, dated before her death, suggests foresight. Explain. Lange's eyes flickered. I paint what I feel. She spoke of danger. I captured it. A twist. Reginald produced a letter from his pocket, trembling. I found this in my room this morning, he said. It read, confess, or you're next. The script matched. The threatening note to Amelia. But the ink was fresh, suggesting another forgery. Poirot examined it. The unseen hand strikes again, sowing fear. But why? To distract or to accuse? He questioned Amelia, who admitted visiting Madame's suite at 9:30 p.m. to discuss the gala spat. She was alive laughing at me, Amelia insisted. I left her unharmed. Colonel Hale confessed to sneaking into the study at 11 p.m., searching for the business ledger. I thought she'd hidden it there, he said. I found nothing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The study, adjacent to the suite, the passage connects them. Someone used it, perhaps to enter or exit. A discovery in the study. A faint blood stain on the bookshelf, near the hidden panel. Not enough for a wound, Poirot said, but perhaps from a cut hand or a blade. Hastings whispered, Poirot, what if the killer hid in the study during the discovery? Slipped out in the chaos? Possible, Poirot said, but the bolt, set from inside. The wire, the mirror, they suggest a trick to lock the door after. He tested a theory, threading a thin wire through the keyhole, attempting to pull the bolt. It moved slightly, but not enough. No, he murmured, the mechanism is elsewhere. A maid reported a new clue. A woman's earring, identical to Amelia's, found in the passage. I lost it weeks ago, Amelia cried. Someone's framing me. Poirot gathered the suspects. The unseen hand weaves a clever web. A syringe, a mirror, a passage, an earring. The locked room is no mystery if the killer was inside, or made it seem so. The little grey cells, they see a pattern. The promise was Madame's doom, but whose hand delivered it? Reginald protested. I was in the billiard room, I swear. Thorne's voice was cold. You've no evidence, monsieur. Clara wept. I only typed her letters, Hale growled. This is madness. Lange remained silent, his eyes unreadable. Poirot revealed the passage to the group, watching their reactions. Amelia gasped. Thorne's jaw tightened. Clara trembled. Hale cursed. Reginald paled. Lange's gaze sharpened. "A passage to the crime," Poirot said. "One of you used it, or knew of it. The syringe, stolen from Thorne. The earring, planted to accuse Amelia. The sketch, Lange's foresight, or a taunt?" He paused, his voice dropping. "The truth is near, mes amis. The killer has played a dangerous game, but Hercule Poirot. He sees the unseen. The locked room was no barrier, but a stage for deception. The storm's roar shook the manor, the windows rattling as if echoing Poirot's resolve. The little grey cells, they close in. One final piece, and the puzzle is complete." Chapter 9. The Grand Revelation. The storm over Veroux Manor had reached a fever pitch, its thunder crashing like the judgment of the heavens, shaking the ancient stone walls as if to demand the truth be laid bare. Inside the library, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the weight of impending revelation. Hercule Poirot stood before the massive oak desk, his small frame a beacon of certainty amidst the chaos, his waxed moustache gleaming under the chandelier's flickering light. His green eyes, sharp as ever, swept over the suspects, each a piece in the intricate puzzle of Madame Veroux's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings stood at his side, his notebook clutched tightly, his face a mixture of awe and apprehension, as he whispered, "Poirot, this is it, isn't it? You've cracked the locked room." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind's triumph. "Oui, mon ami. The little grey cells have danced through the shadows, and the truth, it emerges. The locked room is no mystery, but a stage for a most cunning deception. Mes amis, prepare yourselves, the curtain falls." The suspects, Reginald Veroux, Lady Amelia Croft, Dr. Elias Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, and Colonel Marcus Hale, sat in a tense arc, their faces etched with dread, defiance, or resignation. Victor Lang, the artist, leaned against a bookcase, his paint-stained hands folded, his eyes unreadable, as if awaiting a verdict. The storm's roar underscored the moment, the manor trembling under its fury. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice slow and deliberate, "Madame Veroux was murdered in her suite, a dagger in her heart, a note in her hand proclaiming, 'The promise is fatal.' The room was bolted from within, the key inside, the French doors locked, the windows sealed. An impossible crime, no? Yet the little grey cells, they see through the impossible. Let us unravel the threads." He paced, his boots silent on the Persian rug. "We have found clues, a bloody handkerchief, an inky glove, a silk thread, a brass cog, a mirror shard, a syringe, a hidden passage. We have motives, debts, betrayal, a faked death, a promise to reveal it all. And we have complications, a poisoned butler, a threatening note, a flight into the storm. But the truth, it is simple, yet brilliant." Poirot turned to the suspects. "Let us begin with the locked room. The bolt was set, the key inside, the French doors latched. How did the killer enter and exit? The passage, behind the study's bookshelf, offers a path, but the bolt remains. A wire through the keyhole, a device with the cog? No. The little grey cells reject complexity. The truth is elegance itself." He held up the mirror shard. "This, found near the desk, is not from the vase. It is from a small hand mirror, used to see around corners, perhaps to watch the hall while the killer worked. The silk thread, the wax on the key, they suggest a trick, but not mechanical. The dumbwaiter, with its blood and oil, carried something, perhaps the dagger, but not the killer." Hastings interrupted. "But Poirot, the bolt, it was in place when we broke in." "Oui, Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "But consider, the bolt was not the barrier it seemed. Let us reconstruct." He recounted the night. Madame Veroux, alive at 10:30 p.m., when Dr. Thorne administered a sedative, was found dead at midnight. Clara visited at 10:15 p.m., Amelia at 9:30 p.m., Hale near the wing at 11 p.m. The scream, the locked door, the key inside, all pointed to an impossible crime. Poirot continued. "The motives are clear. Monsieur Reginald, your debts threatened disinheritance. Madame Croft, your humiliation by Madame's letter burned deep. Dr. Thorne, your euthanasia of Charles Veroux was a secret she could expose. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your forged signatures risked ruin. Colonel Hale, your business was crumbling under Madame's terms. Monsieur Lange, your illegitimacy, denied by her broken promise, cut like a knife." He paused, letting the storm's thunder punctuate his words. "But only one of you had the means, the motive, and the cunning. Let us examine the clues." He held up the inky glove, found in Mademoiselle Beaumont's hamper, but too convenient, a plant to accuse her. The earring, Madame Croft's, but lost weeks ago, another misdirection. The red paint, Monsieur Lange's, but mixed with blood, carelessness, or intent. The syringe, Dr. Thorne's, but stolen, used to poison Jenkins, who saw a shadow. Poirot's voice dropped. "The shadow on the balcony, the passage, the mirror, they point to one truth. The killer entered the suite, struck Madame, and left, leaving the room locked. But how? The passage is too narrow for speed, the balcony too high without a ladder. The key dropped inside, but not by accident." He turned to the suspects. "The little grey cells have seen the trick. The killer was in the room when the door was broken, hiding, then slipping out in the chaos. The wardrobe, large and deep, was unchecked in the panic. The key was placed inside, the bolt set, but not by Madame." Gasps rippled through the room. Reginald paled. Amelia clutched her pearls. Thorne's jaw tightened. Clara wept. Hale cursed. Lange's eyes flickered. Poirot pointed to Victor Lange. "You, Monsieur Lange, are the murderer." Lange's smile faded. "Absurd, monsieur. I was in my studio." "Non," Poirot said. "You are Victor Veroux, the supposedly dead Charles Veroux, returned in disguise after faking your death to escape debts. Madame's promise to reveal your survival threatened your new life. You killed her to silence her." He explained. "You entered the suite at 11:01 p.m., admitted by Madame, who suspected your identity. You argued, stabbed her with her letter opener, then hid in the wardrobe. When the door was forced, you slipped out, mingling with the crowd. The key was dropped through the keyhole with a thread, pulled free after. The mirror shard, you used it to watch the hall from the wardrobe's crack. The paint, mixed with blood, was from your cut hand. Mistake." Poirot held up the sketch. "This drawing, dated before the murder, shows the dagger. You planned it, monsieur. The passage, a red herring, discovered to mislead. The syringe, the earring, the glove, all planted to confuse." Lange's voice was cold. "You have no proof." Poirot smiled. "The little grey cells, they find proof. Your shoes match the balcony footprint, small, because you wore Madame's to mislead. The scar in your portrait, you painted it to taunt her, but it betrayed your identity. And this," he produced a hidden letter from Charles, found in the attic, with a unique ink smudge matching Lange's studio. "Your forgery, traced to frame others." Lange's composure cracked. "She would have ruined me. I rebuilt my life, and she wanted to tear it down." Poirot nodded. "You killed her, then staged the locked room. The bolt was set before you hid. The key dropped after. The scream? A recording, played on a gramophone hidden in the wardrobe, timed to draw us." Hastings gasped. A gramophone! Poirot! That's brilliant! Oui, Poirot said. The little grey cells, they see all. The vase, shattered in your struggle. The note, forced from her hand before death. The poison on Jenkins to silence his witness of your shadow. Lang lunged, but Hale restrained him. You devil! Hale roared. Poirot's voice was calm. Justice, Monsieur Lange. It comes for all. The police, when they arrive, will take you. The storm's thunder rolled, as if in agreement. The suspects exhaled, relief and shock mingling. Clara wept. Amelia collapsed. Thorne adjusted his spectacles. Reginald stared. Hale nodded grimly. The little grey cells, Poirot said. They never fail. The promise was fatal, but the truth, it is free. Chapter 10. Dawn of Justice. The storm over Veroux Manor had finally begun to wane, its thunder retreating to a low growl. As the first rays of dawn pierced the heavy clouds, casting a pale, golden light across the Surrey hills. The ancient estate, with its ivy-clad walls and towering chimneys, stood silent, as if exhaling after the tempest of secrets that had torn through its halls. Inside the library, the air was heavy with the scent of polished oak and the lingering tension of a case resolved. Hercule Poirot stood before the grand fireplace, its embers now cold, his small frame radiating quiet triumph. His waxed moustache gleamed under the chandelier's soft glow, and his green eyes, sharp as ever, surveyed the assembled company with a mix of compassion and resolve. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook tucked away, stood at Poirot's side, his face a blend of relief and admiration. "Poirot," Hastings said softly, his voice tinged with awe. "You've done it again. That wardrobe trick, the gramophone, it was diabolical. How did you see through it all?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Mon ami, the little grey cells, they thrive on order, where others see only chaos." The locked room was but a stage, and Victor Lang, he played his role too well. But now, justice must take the stage. The suspects, Reginald Veroux, Lady Amelia Croft, Dr. Elias Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont and Colonel Marcus Hale, sat in a subdued semicircle, their faces etched with the aftermath of revelation. Victor Lang, unmasked as Charles Veroux, the supposedly dead husband, stood restrained by Colonel Hale, his paint-stained hands bound, his enigmatic gaze now broken, replaced by a flicker of defiance. The police, delayed by the storm, had finally arrived, their heavy boots echoing in the hall as they awaited Poirot's final summation. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice slow and deliberate, "the tragedy of Madame Elise Veroux is concluded. She was murdered in her suite, a dagger in her heart, a note in her hand proclaiming, 'The promise is fatal.'" The room was bolted, the key inside, the French doors locked, an impossible crime, no? Yet the little grey cells have unravelled the deception. Let us review, for clarity and justice. He paced, his boots silent on the Persian rug, the storm's dying murmurs underscoring his words. Madame Veroux promised to reveal that her husband, Charles Veroux, faked his death to escape debts. This its secret threatened ruin for many. Monsieur Reginald, your inheritance; Madame Croft, your pride; Dr. Thorne, your reputation; Mademoiselle Beaumont, your loyalty; Colonel Hale, your business. But one among you had the deepest motive, Victor Lange, or rather Charles Veroux himself. Lange's eyes flashed, but he remained silent. Poirot continued, "You, monsieur, returned in disguise as an artist, your face altered by surgery, your identity hidden. Madame suspected, and her promise to expose you was your doom. You could not let her speak." He turned to the clues. The locked room was your masterpiece. You entered the suite at 11 p.m., admitted by Madame, who wished to confront you. You argued, and in a moment of rage, you stabbed her with her own letter opener, engraved with her initials. To create the illusion of an impossible crime, you hid in the wardrobe, large, deep, unchecked in the chaos of discovery. When Colonel Hale broke the door, you slipped out, mingling with the crowd. Poirot held up the mirror shard. This from a hand mirror. You used to watch the hall through the wardrobe's crack, ensuring your moment to escape. The silk thread, caught on the balcony, was from your artist's smock, torn in your haste. The key, dropped inside, was pushed through the keyhole with a needle and thread, then pulled free. A classic trick, but effective. Hastings gasped. And the gramophone, Poirot. That scream, it was a recording? Oui, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. Hidden in the wardrobe, set to play at midnight, drawing us to the scene. The note, the promise is fatal. You forced Madame to write before. Her death. Her hand trembling under duress. The broken vase, shattered in your struggle, its water spilling to obscure any trace of your presence. He addressed the red herrings. The bloody handkerchief in Reginald's room. A nosebleed, as he claimed, confirmed by Jenkins. The inky glove in Mademoiselle Beaumont's hamper, planted by you, Monsieur Lange, to accuse her. The earring in the passage, stolen from Madame Croft, another misdirection. The syringe with digitalis, used on Jenkins. You took it from Dr. Thorne's bag to silence the butler's witness of your shadow on the balcony. Poirot held up the sketch of Madame with a dagger. This, dated before the murder, betrayed your intent. The blood beneath your red paint, a cut from your struggle, carelessly left, and the letter from Charles, found in the attic with your unique ink smudge, proof of your forgery to frame others. Lange's composure shattered. She would have destroyed me, he shouted. I built a new life, a new name. She had no right to tear it down. Poirot's voice was calm, but unyielding. You chose murder over truth, monsieur. You forged the threatening notes to Madame Croft and Reginald, sowing fear to cloud the investigation. The hidden passage, discovered to mislead us. The brass cog, the oil in the dumbwaiter, hints of a mechanical trick, but mere distractions. The little grey cells, they saw through your charade. Colonel Hale tightened his grip on Lang. You blackguard! You nearly ruined us all! Lady Amelia, tears streaming, whispered, Elise, she didn't deserve this. Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his face grim. I should have seen it, his manner, his secrecy. Clara Beaumont sobbed quietly, clutching her notebook. I thought she loved me like a daughter. Reginald, pale, muttered, I suspected something, but not this. Poirot addressed them all. Each of you carried secrets, but only one carried a dagger. The promise was fatal, but not for Madame alone. For you, Monsieur Lange, it was your undoing. The police entered, led by a stern inspector. Their uniforms damp from the storm. Monsieur Poirot, the inspector said, we'll take it from here. You've done fine work. Poirot bowed slightly. The little grey cells, Inspector. They serve justice. Monsieur Lange, or rather Charles Veroux, is yours. As Lang was led away, his defiance crumbled, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his confession. The manor seemed to sigh, its secrets laid bare. The remaining guests dispersed, their motives and fears now irrelevant in the face of truth. Madame's fortune would be redistributed. Reginald would inherit, tempered by his debts. Amelia would find peace in her pride. Thorne's reputation would survive scrutiny. Clara's loyalty was vindicated. Hale's business would endure. Poirot and Hastings stood on the manor's steps. As the police van rumbled down the gravel drive, the storm clouds parting to reveal a tentative sunrise. "Poirot," Hastings said, "you never cease to amaze. That gramophone trick, it was like something from a novel." Poirot smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Life, mon ami, is the greatest novel. The little grey cells, they merely read its pages. Now, let us return to London, where a tisane and order await." The manor faded into the mist as they boarded their car, the hills glowing with the promise of a new day. Justice had been served, the fatal promise resolved, and Hercule Poirot's legend grew ever brighter.